Welcome back to Not That Important. We're on the eve of the T20 World Cup in United States and the West Indies. Doesn't it feel, Arman, as if it's snuck up on us? Like I don't fully feel ready for it.
That's because our team sucks right now, bro.
Wait, wait,
So we don't feel like we're ready for
exactly.
it.
But also just generally, like I feel like earlier this week, I don't know. Again, like you said, if it's because Pakistan versus England didn't go well, and it feels like the team isn't ready at all. But just I did feel as if okay, hey man, the World Cup's starting in like less than a week, which is crazy. But then in preparing for this episode, I feel like it well and truly got me into the right state of mind, and now I'm pretty pumped for the action to begin.
Same, same. I'm quite excited for this tournament. I think there's like a few
Yeah,
unknowns, which we'll get into. But I think one of the cool things for me is the fact that you're gonna see two distinctly different
yeah.
halves of the tournament, conditions wise, which I think is super cool. I don't think we've ever really seen anything like that
No,
before.
exactly, because we've seen multi-country tournaments, but if you actually look at the Caribbean, we tend to think of it as one, but it's actually not. There's like multiple countries involved, and the
Yeah.
states brings another element into it, which is a new dynamic that we're not used to. And then, regardless of where you go in the Caribbean, there's like a unique flair that those islands bring. So not only on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. So I think the atmosphere is going to be pretty exciting. So we're playing across three different venues in the U.S., which is Dallas, New York, and Florida. And then in West Indies, there's Barbuda. No, there's Antigua, Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, and St. Lucia, right? Unless I'm missing anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jamaica's not
yeah.
in there, which is like a massive
Exactly.
surprise,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. They're always like one of the bigger cultural hubs, I think, in terms of cricket. So it's interesting. And then on top of that, you have like a new
Yeah.
format, right? There's 20 sides, which is insane for cricket. You're not used to that at all, but I'm super, super excited about that because I think one of the things I've been really critical about in cricket is the fact that they've really restricted the game and they haven't allowed for it to grow naturally. And obviously, like in one days, I understand why that's the case because, like, there's like a huge gulf between sides that's exposed over 50 overs, but in T20s all of that is narrowed. So like I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few upsets in this tournament just because 20 over ka khel hai, like one or two players get going, anything can happen for any side, and everyone has those few players, particularly with the the exposure that everyone's getting across T20 leagues in the world. Like yes, there's different quality in terms of the various leagues, but at the end of the day, it's T20 cricket, and so it's really exciting to see all these teams, particularly in the new format, from my perspective.
The one thing I would look forward to is like West Indies obviously has an amazing and rich cultural history for the game. The two events that I remember being played there are the 2007 World Cup and the 2010 T20. And I just remember the broadcast quality being like really poor, relatively to what we'd seen around that times in different countries. And I hope that's not the case, and I don't expect it to be the case. But I think it'll be like it's something that I'm looking forward to, and I hope that the ICC and the broadcasters get right this
And I think
time.
with the growth of the game and the money that's in the game
Advanced,
now, like I
yeah,
don't think that should be an
it should
issue.
be fine.
What's also interesting is
Yeah,
for the first time we saw cricket use the way football uses like qualification for the World Cup, which is that it was based on regions. So we see teams that otherwise wouldn't have had any chance of qualifying in the tournament. Sides like Papua New Guinea, sides like Uganda, and so like I know we don't know too much about them, but I'm also excited to see some of that, particularly from Uganda, like that African flavor coming in because I know a lot of their players are not like expats, they're their own local players and they beat Zimbabwe to get here. So, all these teams will feel confident that this could be their opportunity to really make a name for themselves, which is going to be fantastic. I think as far as like today's episode goes, we're going to be previewing the tournament. I think the main focus is really going to be on the teams that we think are the challengers. Before we go into that, I did want to touch a little bit on the format. So there's 20 teams in this World Cup. These are divided across four groups. So the initial group stage is going to be every team in each group playing each other, and then the top two teams are going to go into a second group stage. Now this is where I had a little bit of a gripe with the format because it wouldn't be cricket and the ICC if they didn't throw in some anti-competitive rules in the tournament. Because the way it's set up is that teams are seeded prior to going into the tournament. So, for example, if Pakistan wins all their games and finishes first in their group, they'll still go through to the next round as the number 2 ranked team because India is above them in the ICC rankings, which doesn't like sit well with me just because of the fact that you could have 4 teams that win their groups all be in the same group in the next round, and so you're basically saying that the best teams might not necessarily make it to the semifinals, which also threw a spanner in the works for me when making my predictions because the 4 teams that I thought were going to make it to the semifinals are most likely going to be in the same group in the Super 8s. So it makes things a little challenging from that perspective as well. But we'll get into that. Let's go through the sides.
Yeah, who you want to start with,
Let's
bro?
start with the hosts, bro. Let's start with West Indies.
Windies.
Bro, their team looks really strong. Obviously, the conditions are going to suit them. They know that they're playing in front of their home crowd. But I'm just looking at their batting, and there's explosive players like throughout the 11, particularly like in the middle order. I would argue like they have the best middle order in the tournament, perhaps rivaled only by South Africa. Because you look at Puran, you look at Rovman Powell, you look at Shimron Hitmire, you look at
Dre
Rutherford, and then
Russ.
you look at Dre Russ coming in after them. Like
Dre
that is an
Russ.
embarrassment
A
of
lot of
riches. You
power.
probably will have one of them not even making it to the team. Most likely going to be Rutherford because they then have the option of like someone like Shai Hope or Rustin Chase who are more long format players who can add some of that solidity. So yeah, like I'm looking at their side in terms of batting in particular, and I think they're gonna post some big totals in some games. Uh,
We've seen a little bit of resurgence from them because they kind of like slipped through the cracks. Obviously, being one of the kings of T20 cricket, but now it seems like with really nice showings in Australia. I think they destroyed South Africa, albeit not their main team, but I think they smacked them right now in their
yeah,
own home conditions. Add to that the fact that they have knowledge of their own home conditions, and these players now are kind of bred for this format of the game. And I think there's like been a change of guard with leadership with Rovman Powell
and
taking
Darren
over.
Sammy is the
They have
coach.
lefties and righties throughout. Darren Sammy is a T20 cricket genius, right? When it comes to thinking the game, they've got good spin bowlers. The only probably uh, thing that's lacking is
Leg
like a
spinner.
top class pace
Okay.
attack. Top class pace, leg spinner fine. I still feel like this Moti guy that
Yeah, he's a bit
you
of a
hear about is
mystery
supposed
left
to
arm
be.
spinner. Yeah,
Yeah, and then you have Akil Hussain who's really
Wiley.
good.
Yeah,
You have Rostin Chase who can bowl a little bit. So I think there's options there.
I think
I just think they're missing top class
I
fast
was gonna
bowling.
say because I think with their pacers, I think they have individual talent, and they have the pace to trouble opposition lineups. Particularly like if you talk about individuals,
Do they though? Do they have the pace
with
though?
Shamar Joseph, someone like him, like the X factor he brings. Like I know he
Yeah,
hasn't played. I
he's
know he
one
hasn't played
guy.
much T20 cricket, but just what we saw from him in Australia, he has the. I think they're gonna back him. I think he
He has the
could. Yeah, he
sauce.
could trouble some
Yeah.
opposition. So I think that's the thing. Like they have options. They have like Romario Shepherd, they have Obed McCoy, Zari Joseph. Like maybe not the top tier talent, but definitely enough experience that can back up their spin attack. But I think again for me, their bowling lineup isn't as strong, particularly the pace attack, as you said. They have good spin options, but I think the batting lineup is so strong that they can probably afford to concede a little more than other teams because they'll be backing themselves to be able to like chase that down or put like huge totals on the board. So um, that's going to be interesting to see. Sort of interested to see this Gudakesh Modi guy. I've never seen him play before, but he's been in good form recently. So he could represent a bit of the unknown. I'm not sure if he'll play because Akil Hussain is also a left arm spinner, but then they also have the option of throwing in like Rustin Chase off break, and he's an all rounder as well, so he could lengthen their batting lineup. So again, they have options. I also want to see how Andre
Yeah.
Russell does as a bowler because I haven't really been following the IPL. So apparently his numbers are good. He took 3 wickets in the final as well. But let's see if they are prepared to play him as a fifth bowler or if they want some more assurance with someone like Rustin Chase, which means they'll have to drop one of those explosive batters that I mentioned earlier.
They're batting like I pulled out a random scorecard, man. Like they've got guys like Johnson Charles at the top, right?
Yeah, Brandon King.
With Kyle Maris,
Cal
Brandon
Mares is
King
not
is
in the
there.
squad.
Then bro, like, did
No,
he
he
not make
didn't
the
make the
squad?
squad. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting for me. So they were gonna go with Brandon King and probably Johnson Charles at the top then, and then Nicholas Puran I think is
I
a
was
top tier T20 player, right? So that's gonna be the real key for me is to see how he goes, because he's like one of those guys who can do anything. Right? He's got a lot of talent. I remember first seeing him in the CPL 10, 11 years ago when he was like a teenager, and he's obviously, he's been able to back some of that talent up at the international level, and I think he's that talisman for them with the bat who they're really gonna rely on and look to.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say this has to be Nicholas Puran's tournament. He's been around for a while. He lights up the IPL consistently. His record is phenomenal, particularly in recent years. And playing at home now as like more of a senior player because he's been around for a while, I think they're going to be banking on him to deliver. And I think he could. And he could be one of those players that, if he plays to his potential, that could deliver West Indies that trophy that they've been missing in the recent years.
I'm looking through this as well, bro. I'm actually, I think Johnson Charles. No, Johnson Charles is there. Okay, yeah. So that's going to be one opener, and then they've got some other backups, like guys like Shea Hope, who've kind
Yeah.
of like transformed their game completely. So it's going to be interesting how they line up their 11. But I think with how they've been playing, conditions, personnel, you could see them for sure making a top four
Yep,
spot.
absolutely.
Good balance in their side and a lot of power, and then obviously the great Dre Russ in terms of
Yep.
T20. I think you have to classify him as that. So a lot of resources there for
Yeah,
them.
definitely. I think they have everything that it takes to win a tournament. Maybe not the base bowling, but again, like with their experience in those conditions, they could get to the semis and then anything can happen. So again, they're always like the um, neutrals' favorite side because when West Indies are doing well,
Yeah,
it's always like an
everyone's second
exciting
favorite team.
tournament. So given that they're at home, let's see what they can do.
Well, I mean, the last T20 World Cup they won, man. You can say that they won it without a genuine pacer. You had
Hmm.
Dre Russ, right? But Dre Russ has never really been a
Hmm.
certified four overs bowler like that. And then they won it on the back of Carlos Brathwaite, medium pacer, DJ Bravo, medium pacer, but a lot of
Yeah,
class in
Nows.
T20. So I lot of nows able to bowl at the death, and I think they might be missing that a little bit. So I'll be
Yeah,
interested to see which pacer can step up and kind of
definitely
right.
agreed. Um,
Hopefully, Shamar Joseph, like you said, would be exciting.
Definitely. So England पे आए. So obviously
England
we've
back
seen a
at
lot of
Chalo.
them recently, but didn't tell us anything that we didn't know already. But I think one thing I wanted to talk about with England is normally we always talk about their batting options and the power that they have in their team. But I look at this bowling lineup, and it might be one of the best and most balanced in this entire competition. Um, we have Jofra Archer back, which is amazing. He's one of my favorite bowlers to watch in world cricket across formats. And he's had a horrendous few years with injury, but he's back now. And he's going to be playing in the Caribbean, which is where he's from. So that's going to be exciting. He's going to be extra, like, it's going to be a bit of extra motivation for not only him, but someone like Chris Jordan as well. Um, and then you have,
Can you imagine them turning up to a final in
yeah,
Barbados, bro,
exactly.
against the West Indies or something like that? Like that would be kind
That
of
would be
crazy.
insane.
So you've got those interesting storylines going on there
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. And then just looking through the rest of their bowling attack, like Mark Wood has the pace to tear apart like any batting lineup. A lot of fun was poked this week at the way Azam Khan got out to him, but that delivery was virtually unplayable. Tum kisi ko bhi khara kar do, and they wouldn't have been able to play that.
Test match
Exactly.
maybe that could have been
Then you have
yeah.
Jordan, who honestly, for me, like if I look at his PSL performances in recent years, I've been starting to underrate him a little bit. I know he was like one of their most important players in T20s in the past, but he sort of made a little bit of a resurgence this year, and he has the experience, he has the know-how, and the death bowling and the Yorkers. So I think he's going to add a little bit of a different factor.
And a three-dimensional
Exactly, the
cricketer,
fielding is incredible. So
right?
just that, and then they obviously on the bench they still have like Sam Curran as an all-rounder option if they want to play four pacers. They have left arm and Reece Topley, तो options तो हैं उनके पास बहुत. And then they have,
Yep.
if you look at spinners, arguably the most consistent T20 spinner over the past decade is Adil Rashid. Sorry, um,
Somehow still so underrated,
continuously,
man.
and he had
Right?
Pakistan players in a spin, which I know isn't saying much, but he's excellent, and those pitches will turn. So, and then you have like Moeen Ali and Livingston adding different options. Like they seem like
Well, Jags pulls as
exactly,
well.
and they're
So
oh sorry, go ahead.
no, no,
No, I
go
was
ahead,
gonna
go,
say
go.
like
Finish
they're
up.
defending champions, but at the same time they also have a point to prove because their ODI World Cup went so badly, right? So they might be coming in
Yeah.
as the champions, but they also have a lot to prove and show. So from that perspective, with the players they have coming back, like I think that
And it looks rejuvenated, bro, because I their ODI team, the bowling looked
Mm.
substandard before
Yep.
the tournament as well, right? Now you have express pace with two guys. You have Chris Jordan, Reese Topley, Sam Curran, man of the tournament in
Exactly.
the last tournament. And then there's two really interesting points for me personally here. Number one, I think Josh Butler, he showed in that Pakistan series, he's a wizard at using
Yeah.
his options. You know, those guys don't think too much about me over kiska gat raha because main bowler ka. If he feels that it's the right time to get a part timer on, he's not going to look at the overs he has in the bank. He's going to bowl that because he thinks it's the right option. So anywhere between seven, maybe eight options those guys have, right? Depending on the 11 they play. Add to that the fact, okay, so both of the T20 World Cups England's won. First one was in the West Indies in these conditions, where they became notorious for
Slower
using the
bouncer.
slower ball
Yeah.
bouncer into the
Yeah.
wind, right? And because West Indies is famous for having the wind blow across one
Mm.
side of the ground, right? So they use those conditions. Guys like Ryan
Yeah.
Sidebottom and
Anderson
Tim
was on the
Bresnan
bench.
and Stuart
He didn't
Broad.
play. Yeah.
Anderson was on the bench, right? You look at a lot of those dismissals, they're caught deep square,
Mm.
deep mid, right? Um, then you look at the World Cup last year, where guy like Sam Curran was man of the tournament. Think about everything he was doing, all his dismissals. Look at that Pakistan game. Slower bouncers,
Mm.
right, into the pitch, making Pakistan hit to the long side. So somehow when they've won, the strategy has always been based
Yeah.
around that. So I feel like this gives them a good chance to do that as well. And then they have a lot of variety. Batting के बारे में
I
तो we
think the
don't have
one
to talk
thing I
about,
wanted
right?
that
It's
yeah, we don't really have to add much because everyone knows. But the two things I wanted to add that are going to be a little different is that in Will Jacks they found another fearless player who bowls spin as well, so that adds to their all-round
yep.
options again. And then moving Bairstow to four is interesting because it gives them a good player of spin in the middle overs, which I think could be something that could be like a key to success for them. If they lose like early wickets at the top or anything of that sort, they have like him in the middle order as an experienced player. So I think that is something to look out for as well.
I want to see how they use Ben Duckett because he's not
Yeah.
going to start, and somehow they've never
Mm.
really used him. But I remember on that one tour of Pakistan, the guy's an
Yeah, he
excellent player
is.
of spin. He has options, a square of the wicket, both sides with the sweep, fearless
They don't
player.
need him.
So I think he can.
Yeah.
They don't need him, but he can
Yeah.
factor in. Like his skill set is perfect for some of these
Mm.
conditions, right? So I'd be interested to see what the leeway is going to be for someone like Johnny Bairstow at number
Mm.
four or Will Jackson number three, because I think the rest of those guys are going to inevitably keep their place for the
Yep.
majority of the time. I don't believe in heavy favorites, especially in T20 cricket. But England's team, I think,
Yeah,
looks the
they have the
strongest on
best. They have
paper
the
right
best
now.
squad. Yeah, 100%. If I had to
Yeah.
rank squads, they would definitely be number one for me. Um, let's go to Australia,
Yep.
bro. They still don't take T20 cricket seriously, but they have the best players in the world, so they're always gonna be there.
Bro, we can say they don't take it seriously, and I think they don't take it seriously, but like you always look at their squad and it always
No,
is their
no,
best
I don't mean it in
players.
terms of like the squad. I just mean it like, bro, if you like, shouldn't Pat Cummins be the captain if like you believe the format is so
Yeah,
important?
yeah.
Like I'm
True.
not to take anything away from Mitchell Marsh. I think like he could be a very good captain. He's a fantastic player. Is what do they call him?
They call him
Bison, yeah, the
Bison.
Bison. Like again, he's an excellent
Bison.
player, but why isn't Cummins the captain? Like he's gone from strength to strength. He's won the Test Championship, the ODI World Cup. He's led a Sunriser side that finished like I think bottom of the table to the final. Like yes, they didn't get over the line, but
Retain the ashes.
having
Yeah.
said all that,
He
bro,
did
like
everything.
घंटा कुछ फर्क पड़ेगा. Like it won't matter at all. Like they
They,
have the best, or not the best, but they have
yeah.
like the key pace bowling trio across formats. They've won everything there is to win. Travis Head is looking impeccable right now. Warner is always out of form coming into tournaments, and then that changes as soon as the tournament begins. Middle order may on paper sometimes you think okay, like if they have Maxwell, Tim David, and Stoinis, like unka agar din nahi hua, like you can get at them, but bro, like all they need is one of them to have a good day, and that's the game done for the opposition, right? Um,
And Max was always a better bowler than he
Always,
gets
yeah, yeah,
credit
yeah,
for,
exactly.
right?
That's what I was gonna say. The next point,
Um,
like they'll probably have Maxwell or Stoinis as their fifth bowler, which again, when you're targeting their team in terms of like weaknesses, you always look at that, but it never really seems to have a big issue to them. So it's very easy again to
yeah.
just close your eyes and expect them to be there and thereabouts again. I think with Australia, I don't have too much to add with them.
Bro, we can say that, but bro, they've sucked in T20 World Cups, bro.
Yeah, no,
They
for sure.
have. I think they've like by their standard, especially how many bro they flopped at home
Yeah,
last time when they were the champions. 21 they made the top four. 2010 they made the top four. 2007 they made the top four. They haven't made the top four outside of that in eight
Yeah,
tournaments, right? So they have been serial
100%.
underachievers in this format
Yeah,
of the game, and they've always had an incredible squad. So I don't know what happens. I think sometimes there's always inevitably in T20 cricket in each tournament there's a team or two that surprises
it's
and
a
plays a
leveler.
different-ish brand of cricket.
T20 is like
Or
a
it's a bit
leveler.
of a leveler, and there's always an X factor. Australia has that X factor anyways, but a West Indies or Sri Lanka
Hmm.
or Pakistan will come up with an X factor for a specific tournament
Yeah.
that and 2012 they've made four of the
Hmm.
semifinals, so not as bad as I'm saying, but nowhere near the standards that we expect from them,
Definitely.
right? If you compare it to the other formats of
I
the
think.
game. So and they randomly crash out when they look the strongest. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think
Obviously, I don't think semifinal has to be a foregone conclusion
for
with these
sure. I
guys
think I'm
the
just
way that
looking
everybody
at
is
the way
saying.
they went about it in the ODI World Cup, and obviously like cross format delusion sort of creeps in a lot. And just looking at the year that all these players have had, maybe not in T20s, but actually to be fair, like a lot of them have performed in the IPL as well. It just looks like they're always going to be menacing when it gets to the big games. But ultimately, it's like you said. Any T20, like I said, like, it's a leveler, so anyone on their day can beat anyone, and I think that's probably
Yeah,
gonna be the challenge for Australia.
for sure.
South Africa.
Let's go to South Africa, bro.
So, I mean, I know as I hinted earlier, like think they have the best middle order alongside the West Indies in the competition. Henrik Klaassen is probably the hottest prospect in T20 batting right now, and he's sort of taken the limelight away from David Miller, but David Miller is still there. They have Tristan Stubbs, they have Aiden Markram, like that is as solid as it gets. And then at the top of the order, De Kock is still around, but I was actually very quietly impressed by Riza Hendricks in the Pakistan Super League. He seemed like a proper player, and I think with those guys to come in the middle order, I think he could add a lot of value if they play him at the top.
Yeah, and they South Africa kind of, you see it in the One Day World Cup as well, and I think the T20 will be a little bit similar. They kind of
Mm.
build towards that
Yeah,
crescendo right at the end with the, and I think they can afford it. The type of power hitters they have, and Quentin de Kock is not your
yeah,
everyday anchor either, right? So there's like there's an insane amount of um, power there with the batting. You talked about Heinrich Klaassen, David Miller. I'll say it again. I think one of the most underrated players of the entire
mm,
generation with what he does. Aiden Markram seems to be, coming into his own as a leader as
yeah.
well with this group. So, and then you get to the bowling, and I don't think there's anything missing in the bowling either, right?
I agree. Particularly with Nokia coming back from injury. I know he's looked a little rusty in his recent games, but he's vitally important for them, right? He's like that enforcer, similar to Mark Wood for England, similar to Haris Rauf for Pakistan. If he's at his best, the rest of the attack clicks around him. But having said that, like Rabada, Kordzea, Norkia, and Janssen are really good fast bowlers. I want to see, like, because I haven't watched IPL and stuff, I haven't seen them too much in the T20 format recently. So I want to see, okay, like, how they do, particularly like with the way T20 is gone and the bowlers they are. I could see them going for plenty of runs as well. And their spinners have it's the same guys, Maharaj and Shamsi. Shamsi had really bad PSL. But again, the wickets will suit the two of them as well. Having said that, I could see Shamsi in particular going for runs as well. So I think that's going to be the potential little weakness for them to see how their bowling
Yeah,
lineup comes together. But overall, they have the pieces like they always do. Um, I think in the
yeah,
ODI World Cup, like we spoke a little bit about them being like a newer side coming together, and they played really well to get to the semis, right? Like there's no doubt about that. It's very easy to say it was a joke, but because they always like fall short at that time, and that will always be a question mark. But again, now I know it's another format, but can they use the experience of that event in India, like gel together as a side and win? Like you said, Markram, I feel, has a good head on his shoulders, and similar to what I spoke about Puran, it feels like this is all coming together for him to have that tournament to remember because he's been around for a while now, right? Like if
same under 19 World Club class
yeah,
too, bro.
exactly. So
So
that's the
that's
thing for them. Like looking at their squad again, they should make the semis. I feel like I'm saying this about every team, but with South Africa, it's more the mental barrier and taking the next step that's the challenge. And
yeah,
for them to do that, like someone like Aiden Markram's gonna have to step up, because we know Clausen's gonna have those games, right? He's gonna have those games where he single-handedly wins them the game, as well as Miller as well. But what happens when that doesn't work out? Like, what's the plan B? Like, can they
Yeah.
take the game deep with the rest of their guys? Can they rely on their bowling attack to win them that one game where their batting lineup doesn't click? That's gonna be the question mark for South Africa.
They've got some bench strength as well, right? They've got, I think, guys like Tristan
I
Stubbs.
think
I'm
Stubbs
interested
might
to
play.
see what you said about the bowling.
Yeah,
Stubbs will
yeah,
probably
yeah.
start low key, right? But with their bowling, I think you bring up an interesting point. Maybe if anything, they're lacking a guy who we've seen base his game off variations. I don't know if they quite
Yeah.
have that, but we'll see how they adapt. And Maharaj, yeah, I feel like he gets like a bad rep too. He is a wicket taker, but he not Maharaj,
Mhm.
sorry, Shamsi. But he can go for runs. But for some reason, I feel like the first place we actually saw him, like where he rose to prominence, was the CPL. I remember he used to take the
Yeah.
magic wand out and celebrate like that kind of stuff. That's the
Yeah.
first place I remember seeing this guy. So I feel like he'll have a decent measure of the
Yeah,
conditions as
for
well.
sure.
So good team, bro. I think most of their boxes are
Yeah,
ticked
I agree as
from a
well.
personal
I
standpoint.
think that's going to be theme throughout. Like, I think a lot of these sides are very well balanced, and that's going to lead to like a an open tournament here. Should we come to
Yep.
the rivals?
Let's get to the rivals, bro.
Acha. So let's start with India next. Then I have a few things to say about India. I think, as always, they have an embarrassment of riches, particularly like with the IPL. Every year you see like there's three or four like outstanding new batsmen, new to us. Like, they probably know about them because they've come through the proper channel and everything. But unfortunately for them, like, it doesn't matter if you have 25 players who are good enough to play for any team in the world, because ultimately only 11 can play on the day. And when I look at India, like, the best way I think about them or can describe them is like a rich man's version of Pakistan. And what I mean by that is that they're restricted by an inherent conservatism, particularly in the big knockout games. The difference between them and Pakistan is that we almost have an excuse in that we don't have that quality. So, like, our players have to take the game deep, and our middle order is not as strong. India doesn't have the.
And we usually free up in
Yeah,
those knockout
exactly,
games, right?
exactly.
Should we? For us, the hard part is getting to
Yeah,
those games. But if we get there, then we end up
yep.
freeing up. They get there,
And
you
close up.
know,
It
every year, but they kind of it's the
it's
opposite for
the
them.
it's the pressure, right? Like, I mean, the pressure and the
Yeah.
demands that.
नहीं लेकिन
No,
pressure
no,
हमारे
for
पे भी
sure,
तो
for
है
sure,
ना bro
absolutely. But I'm
है
just
ना.
talking about like what, like, it's without a doubt that pressure plays a part. Like, that's why they
Yeah.
sort of tense up in those games, right? But so, having said that, I think, in my opinion, um, if India are going to win this tournament, it's going to be their bowling that will do it for them. I think in Jasprit Bumrah and Kuldeep Yadav, they have the most dangerous pacer and the most dangerous spinner in this event. I don't think it's a stretch to say that. Plus, they have picked plenty of spin options in their squads. And the odds are stacked in their favor a little bit, because they know if they get to the semifinal, they'll be playing in Guyana, which is a spin friendly wicket, which probably has helped them pick that squad as well. Um, that so yeah, on paper, I think that if they're to make it to the knockouts and win the tournament, I think their bowling lineup is going to be key to that. Their batting will be consistent as always. I'm actually looking forward to seeing Jaiswal, because they've picked him over Shubman Gill, so that's a huge call. But on all accounts, like, he's ready for the challenge. Personally, I'm also very excited to have Rishabh Pant back, because I think he's one of the most fun players to watch in world cricket, and with everything he's been through.
Or listen to
Sorry,
and to
and to
listen
listen
to.
to. Yeah, for sure. Our temporary captain. And with everything like he's been through, right, with his accident, his comeback is a feel good story. So I'm really looking forward to him. In fact, मैं अभी warm up
For
match देख रहा
sure.
था, और उसने बांग्लादेश की काफी धुलाई की, and just the shots he was playing was like really fun. So it reinforced how excited I'm to see him play.
With him, I just don't always like, and like you said, they're spoiled for choices. Like, तुम किस को
Yeah,
खिलाओगे top three में? But I don't know. I always found the number five position a little bit strange
yeah,
for him at T20. But he's an awesome player, and I think like I'm making their 11 right now. They can have that perfect balance where they have four pacers, five if you count Dubey. They can have two spinners with Jadeja and Kuldeep, and they can bat all the way up, genuinely up until three, four, five, six, seven, eight
Yeah,
as
with
well,
Jadeja
right?
or Akshar. Yeah,
So so they have a decent balance. I think the one weakness I think they might have, like their spin stocks look among some of the best two or three, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, these types of teams, right? I think
yeah,
they're up there with
100%.
them. I'm not so sure about their pace bowling. Bumrah
Yeah,
obviously is
I agree.
sauce, right? There's no doubt about that. Arshdeep, we've seen some good stuff
Yeah,
out of him too against Pakistan
particularly if
in
the
the
ball is
Asia Cups and
swinging,
stuff. But
they like with Siraj and
if the
Arshdeep,
ball's
they
swinging,
could be a threat. Yeah,
yeah, and he's got some death bowling
yeah,
ability as well, right? Like he just hasn't seemed to been in form. Siraj, I'm not so sure what type of form he's been in either, and how proven he is at the
yeah,
T20 level internationally, and even in that World Cup, like he was good, but out of the three pacers, he seemed to be
yeah.
the weak link, right? When they all played, and then they don't have a backup, so there's no one really on the
I
bench.
think, in my opinion, Siraj is going
And
to be on the bench to start with, and I think they're going to go with Bumrah, Arshdeep,
they're
and
gonna play
Pandya as a
Pandya as the
third.
third
Yeah,
pacer
I
straight
think
away.
because their strength is spin, like they have to back that. I think they're going to have Yadav and they're going to have Jadeja as the two primary spin options, and then they have Hardik
But then let's say they start off in the US with Arshdeep, Pandya, and
and Dubey.
Bumrah. There he doesn't really
Yeah, in the
bowl
IPL because of the stupid rule they have
because of that
with the
rule,
impact
right?
player. Yeah,
So he's like that de facto
yeah,
Shardul Thakur type
essentially.
guy
Yeah,
here, right? Probably not as good of a
yeah,
bowler, of course, but like which is even more
yeah.
concerning than Nabro, because let's say you're going with Bumrah, Pandya, Arshdeep, Dubey, you have Kuldeep and Jadeja.
Honestly, I might be wrong.
You
They
don't
might
really
actually.
have the
Maybe
options
they'll throw
there,
in another
right?
spinner then. Maybe they'll throw in Akshar Patel.
But then who they're gonna throw in Chahal or Akshar Patel for a batter? Then
I can't
they
see that.
might
I
go
can't
all
see
rounder
them doing
heavy.
that.
Then I don't know if Jadeja and Akshar
Yeah,
play
they probably
together,
won't.
right?
Yeah.
If anything, maybe they sit Jadeja out and they play
Hmm.
Chahal, but then your batting gets a little bit weaker inevitably because their tail is not the most
Yeah.
talented with the bat, right? Like, so that's another. Some other teams have guys who come in and hit a couple of sixes, which anyone can do, but India doesn't really seem to have that same, like random
Yeah.
power down the order either. So that's the. I just want to see how they balance the bowling. Kuldeep and Bumrah, out and out, world class,
Hmm.
genuine wicket takers, right? No doubt about that. I'm just interested to see how the 3 to 4 to 5 options around
Yeah.
them kind of line
I
up
also
this
want to see how
tournament.
Hardik Pandya bounces back. His IPL team didn't have like Mumbai Indians were horrible after he became captain, and he's got a lot of criticism in India. But he's one of those players that will relish the challenge of a world event and bouncing back from that criticism. So that'll be interesting to see.
That guy's a
Yeah.
fucking baller, bro. I
No,
don't worry about him. Like he's kind of
from a
like
bowling and batting perspective, right? I'm not worried about him not being able to perform. I mean more of like, can he
yeah,
perform to the level they need to be able to get them to the spot? I think from the bat he can. With the ball, it'll
he's
be
always a
interesting. Yeah.
key. Yeah, yeah. He's a gamer
Hmm.
though. I'll give him that. Like he's got that competitive edge, and him and Shadab are kind of in similar situations where I think when on form, they're both two of the better all rounders in the world, right? In T20 cricket. But both of them seem so out of form
Yeah.
right now. But looking at it from a neutral perspective, if I'm India, there's
Oh no
never
way.
any way I'm putting any doubt on
Yeah.
Hardik Pandya. I'm backing that guy to the
Yeah.
very end, right? Because of the big game
Yeah.
ticker he
And
has.
again,
But good, India has
he's
a
one
really
of
good
those
squad
players
though.
that I feel like wouldn't tense up at the semifinals. Like he'll continue to back himself, and
He doesn't.
ultimately India's success in this tournament for me is going to come down to if their batting can play to their potential, and if they can free up the shackles and express themselves in those important games. If they can do that, then nothing
Yeah.
can stop them from winning the tournament. Bar,
And one more point on Hardik Pandya, like what I really appreciate about him as a player is him for whacking
Mhm.
sixes and being one of the best technical power hitters in the world, right? With his base and his ability to go
Yeah,
straight anywhere straight on the ground, right? From cover all the way to mid wicket, right? He has that type of power where he can go anywhere. But along with that, he has match awareness and he understands how to bat. They trust him as a
yep,
finisher, and he right. So he has that balance. It's not just swing, swing, swing from him. So if you're playing India, he's always a guy you have to get out
yeah, agreed,
if you want to win the game while you're
hundred
defending.
percent. So let's go to New Zealand.
New Zealand have a sneaky good
Yeah,
squad for these
very good.
conditions,
Yeah,
bro.
I agree. I was actually, so like, I'm honestly gonna say, like, I'm a little bored of New Zealand like always reaching the semis and then not being able to do anything there. But when I was going through their squad and building their team, I feel like they have very experienced players who've done it, tournament in, tournament out. They've been there. Most of them were in the IPL, so they come in with IPL, like, sort of big game pressure under their belt. And those who weren't, like Bracewell and Chapman, were like, they had a great series against us, right, in Pakistan. But the thing for me is that if I'm looking at their squad, like, selecting their first 11 is a bit of a headache because now they have their first choice players back, but even the backups have done super well. And for for me, New Zealand is a little bit different to the other teams because for most other teams, like, selecting a playing 11 and four subs is fairly clear. Like, yes, you have those one or two choices based on conditions and whatnot, but I don't think that's the case with New Zealand because I think all 15 of their players could easily be in the starting 11. And that depth, I think, is something that will fill them with confidence because, like, if I just run through their team, I think Devin Conway will play, but who pairs him up the top of the order is a big call because Finn Allen has the firepower. He's a strike rate of 160 plus, but then you have Rachin Ravindra, right, who adds the bowling, and he's proven to be an exceptional talent, and he can do it in the big events.
And he is going to play. He is
So you
going
think
to
they won't play
play,
Finn Allen?
right? Like there's bro Rachin Ravinder. There's no way that kid's
Yeah,
not making
that's
the
fair.
starting 11 after what we've seen from him in the
That's fair.
last year, right?
I honestly,
I'd be interested to see what they do with the lineup, but there's no way he's not
so
playing, especially with the left arm spin option he brings in those
since you
conditions,
brought
right?
that up, um, I'm looking at their team right now, and it's gonna be like crazy to say, but they might just be better off without Williamson in the lineup.
You love this get rid of the classy
Bro,
guy
should I tell you why?
discussion.
No,
This
no.
is your favorite
Yeah,
thing to
fine.
talk about.
I'll explain, right? I think his captaincy and consistency means he has to be in the side. But if you actually look at it, if he was Pakistani and he played 46 or 42 and their team only lost 4 wickets in the semi-final against us last year, like, we'd be slamming him. They didn't lose wickets. They were four down at the end of the innings. He made 46 or
Yeah,
42 in the semi-final against us. Like,
yeah.
that is the, if Babur or Rizwan did that, like, we'd be after them, right? And I feel like sometimes
But go back to the final the year before what he did
what
though. In the final against
what did he
Australia.
make?
He scored 70 or
Yeah,
40
no,
or
that's
something
fair.
like that,
That's
bro.
fair. And I just feel like sometimes that, like, if you look at the other options in their team, like, he might not be explosive enough, right?
Yeah, I see what you're
I'm not
saying.
saying that you drop him, but I'm saying
I see what you're
you look
saying
at
with this
the
case
balance of
though.
the
I
side
get
because
it,
they
I get
have
it.
experience,
Because you've got
Conway
Conway
and
and
Mitchell and
Finn
all
and
around him. But I don't think they're gonna do
yeah,
that. But
yeah.
it's just something that is interesting.
They don't need his anchor as much as a team like us
Yeah,
or
exactly.
maybe India
Yeah,
need a Kohli or Babar type guy,
we
right? So I see what you're saying.
and then also, like,
But with the Kaptani,
yeah,
Hux, it's one of those
captaincy is a
things.
big
I
thing.
feel like he's such a terrific
Yeah.
captain that they're not gonna put that doubt on his
Yeah,
spot,
no,
right?
they're not gonna do that. They're
But
New Zealand, like, they're not. They don't have any doubt in their mind. Um, you spoke about Ravindra's left arm spin, but then they also have Santner, who provides that and provides some, like, batting at the bottom of the order. So they already have, like, a left arm spinner. I think.
it's options
Yeah,
though,
no,
bro.
100%.
No, like
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, like,
you know
you
what I'm
go through
saying?
their 11, they have options, like, everywhere. Like, I know Mitchell and
Yeah,
Phillips won't
Glenn
be, like,
Phillips.
first choice, like, bowlers,
Yeah,
but they'll still be there. Then you have.
Phillips might, bro,
He
low
could
key
be. And then
here
Bracewell, I think
with the off
Bracewell has to
spin.
play. Like, he's a really dangerous player. And then their fast bowlers, they have Bolt, Ferguson, Henry, Saudi. I think for me, I would bench Saudi and play Bolt, Ferguson, Henry. But then they can also play an extra spinner
Yeah,
if they.
and Nisham won't play
Yeah, Nietzsche
then.
won't play because for me, I'm going to play our favorite Chapman by. Because I really like
They've got a
him.
lot
So
of
that's what I'm saying.
options.
Like,
He's really
yeah,
good,
yeah, yeah.
bro.
So
He's a good proper batsman who can
but
hit
that's what I
too.
mean by
Good.
if you look through their 15, there's not one player you'd say, like, if he's in the starting 11, you'd be like, oh, like, why is he playing, or why have they dropped this guy,
Yeah,
because they're all of a very similar level. So that's going to be interesting. Like, for me, like, I don't have Sodhi in their starting 11 to begin with, but depending on which wickets they play, like, he could be an option, and who
they'll
they play
probably.
against as well, right? Just Fakhar Zaman ke samne isko
Yeah,
nahi dalo,
they have a game. I
but
think.
baki logo ke samne dalo.
Exactly. Fakhar Zaman ke samne nahi
Yeah.
डालो उसको. I see your point though, bro. Like you kind of make this 11, and with this, if we're just talking about skill sets, you could kind of see somebody maybe wanting to leave Kane Williamson out of that
Yeah.
11, right? With the class they have around and who they would want to get in. So it'll be interesting to see. They have a pretty
Yeah.
talented team. Bracewell is a really good batter, and he provides that off
Yeah.
spin option. So is Phillips, so is Ravindra, so is Santner. So they have a lot of, like, in T20 you want a bunch of all round options, right? So they have that on any given day, depending on how they want to play. They have a game against Afghanistan, which, so they've drawn the group of death, which is with them, Afghan and West Indies, right? If I'm not mistaken. And they have a really big game in Guyana against Afghanistan, which is supposed to be the turning pitch here. So I'll be interested to see what type of combination they go with there. And I would actually argue on that wicket, that game, Williamson has to play, which I know he will anyways. But like I think a guy like him and his skill set will probably come to the fore more against an Afghanistan on a
Mhm.
spinning wicket, where you probably need that
Yeah.
solidity. But it'll be interesting. Like I could see them making the semifinals. There's a world in which they go home first round as
Mhm.
well, right? With the
Yeah,
group they've drawn.
exactly,
So
exactly that. That is what's stopping me from putting them in the semifinals because like Afghanistan and West Indies could very well turn them over. It just doesn't happen because New Zealand are a side that doesn't get turned over or upset. And on paper, like you might even put them as like the favorites in that group just because of what they've done and their experience over the years. But it's going to be interesting to see whether they get through. Do you want anything to say about Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, I think, bro, I don't think it's a stretch to say that if they play, they have to play very well, and maybe a couple of things going their way. Um, they could make the semis, bro.
Yeah,
They they can make the semis. Again, it's always just coming down to like the
holding their
awareness
nerve in the big
awareness
games.
with
Yeah.
the bat, more so with the bat, I'd say. And then
Would you know?
maybe Navino
I
Hux.
sort of disagree with that. I know with the bat, yes, they'll come to it. But if you look at the last World Cup, it was actually with the ball, not necessarily with the ball, but it was their fielding that let them down. So in that pressure game, like
Yeah,
how will they deal with that? Will they be able to hold on to their
तो वो
catches?
भी हमारे
Yeah,
भाई है ना वो
so I
लोग.
think वो चीज़ें देखनी
Yeah,
पड़ेंगी. Like Noor Ahmed, I think is going to be fantastic in this tournament. I think Rashid is going to continue to go from strength to strength. He's I think captain again, right? So that's something. I think Umar Zai is a player I really rate. You have Ramanullah Gurbaz at the top of the order. They have like a lot of pieces. They still have their experienced players like
lot
Mohammad
of
Nabi
pieces.
around. Mujib is there. Like their players have done it. They have so much tournament experience now. It's just about basically holding their nerve in those key moments, in my opinion. And the pitches will suit them in most venues as well, particularly in the West Indies, if they're playing some of their games there. I know you were looking at where their games are. So anything to add on that front?
Well, I just wanted to first say that with the bowling, like I know what you said about the catching for sure, right? Just you know, catching, I feel like din ki baat
Yeah,
hoti hai, right? Like I feel like something like with their maybe death bowling, they can get a little bit exposed with the third pacer, depending on
yeah,
who they play. But for a guy like Fazil Huck, like the conditions might actually
yeah,
suit him, right? With the swing up front, and then Naveen's a
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
class bowler, I
definitely.
think we can say as well at this stage in his career, right? So I think that and maybe a little bit of the match awareness plus intent
Yeah,
with the bat, a mix of those two things. They've got some really good players, and then they've got some players who probably have to step up a little bit. But the bowling attack, you can argue, is as good as anybody's. They have, I think, a couple of games in Guyana, which really suits them. Like we talked about, they have a really big match fixture against, I think, New Zealand there, which could very well be the determining factor in that group. And this group lines up really nicely too, because I think the last match is West Indies versus Afghanistan. For all we know, might be a de
yeah,
facto knockout match to get
for
into the
sure.
next round
It's
as well. So this is definitely the group to
yeah,
keep your eye
it's
on, right? Just from like a entertainment point of view,
Yeah,
drama point of
absolutely.
view.
It's gonna be chaotic. Particularly with the fact that you had New Zealand's like cool, calm, under pressure nature compared to like Afghanistan's chaos,
और ये दोनों
and
पागल है
West
बिल्कुल
Indies is flair. Like कुछ
या
भी हो सकता है इस group में. Maybe what they'll successfully like make New Zealand like lose their cool as well. That'll be interesting to see just with the dynamic these
for
guys have.
sure.
So I think that the last like because I honestly I know there's a lot of other teams like with the associates like we'll see what they can do. I don't think Bangladesh are looking good at all. They just lost to New Zealand. Sorry, not to New Zealand, to USA, which sort of as a Pakistani, looking at the fact that we have USA in the first game and we're not very confident right now is a little worrying. But I don't think Bangladesh have what it takes to really challenge in this World Cup.
It's the batting more than anything because you can argue the spin bowling with them. They
Yeah.
have enough of those options, right? With the left arm spinners and a guy like Mehdi Hassan Miraj and Shakib. And even, bro, a couple of their pacers are not the worst either. Like
Yeah,
Mustafiz
for
can
sure.
be deadly in these conditions, right? I remember 2016, he was one of the
Yeah.
best pacers with his variations on those slowish pitches. And then Taskeen's class as well. It always comes down to their batting and the lack of ability to kind of kick
Yeah.
on, right? Like a lot of teams may lack a little bit of intent, but Bangladesh at times seemed to lack the genuine
Yeah.
ability that even if they played free of all inhibitions and stuff, I don't quite know where those runs come from
Yeah.
at that stage,
Agreed.
right? If a guy like Shakib Al Hassan is still the first guy you're relying on
And
after all these years, they've got good players. I don't mean to disrespect them. Like they've got Shanto, who's good. I think Mehdi Hassan Miraj is a really talented player, really talented all
but bro,
rounder.
like
It just,
having said all that, like
yeah,
you look at their group, it's South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Netherlands, and I have them fourth place in that group. I think Netherlands will beat them as well. So I wouldn't really include them in the challengers, unfortunately, for Bangladesh.
no, no, me
Yeah.
neither. But they're a test
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
nation, so I
of
had to
course, of
talk
course.
about them a little.
I think the last test
Um,
playing nation we haven't mentioned is Sri Lanka. Um,
Sri Lanka, former
yeah,
champions,
you know,
two-time
it's the same thing, right?
finalists,
Like,
one of the more consistent.
like
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was saying one of the more consistent teams throughout the history of this
Yeah,
tournament,
and
right?
their squad is very similar
In the top
to
three or
the one we
four.
saw in the ODI World Cup. Like we saw there that they had the batting firepower in certain games to compete with other sides, but consistency was the challenge. Like they got blown apart by India's pace attack in the Asia Cup and then again in the World Cup. But looking at some of the positives, like they have Hasaranga back as captain as well, which is a huge boost to them. Because players like him, we spoke about Shadab and Hardik Pandya, but those players are priceless in T20s. 4 overs of mystery spin plus firepower with the bat, it should add a lot to their team. I look at some of their bowlers. I look at Patirana. He continues to be an X factor. He's shown like he's still raw, but he's shown flashes of brilliance in international cricket as well. So now with a few more games under his belt, like this could really be the tournament that he shines in as well. And overall, man, I just want to see Sri Lanka do well, right? Like they're in the bracket with West Indies of sides that bring color to the competition, and hopefully we see them pull off some upsets. I think it's going to be a bit of a long shot, but ultimately for them, the keys to success are like their players like Hasaranga, Patirana, and Kusal Mendes and Theekshana really having like outstanding tournaments, and then they have players around them like Angelo Matthews' experience, Sadira's class, Shanaka's all-round ability. They need all these pieces to click to have an impact. But with those Caribbean wickets, like if things go well for them and they start to get on a roll, like you could see Sri Lanka do some damage as well.
They can make a
Yeah,
run, bro. They can make a run. They could easily make the semifinal if, like, let's say if a guy like Hasaranga just happens to be on one for
yeah,
3 weeks. That itself is he could end up being. He's a guy with the talent to be the player of the
yeah, 100
tournament,
percent.
right? Straight up. They won the Asia Cup a couple of years ago as probably the fourth favorite team at that stage. Um, and bro, like I'm just going through their bowling, like Dilshan Madhushanka, excellent left arm variety. Maistik Shana, all phase spin
Yeah,
bowler. Valala gave
you
very
know,
tidy all
Balalage
rounder.
hasn't played a single T20.
Dushmanta.
Like he hasn't debuted even, which is interesting.
Oh, I'm
Yeah, I was
surprised.
surprised
I'm
by that as well.
surprised.
Yeah,
But talented youngster Dushmanta Chamira,
yeah,
absolute pace, like
yeah,
one of the quicker guys in the world, and I'm happy he's back. Matisha Patirana, excellent T20 bowler, excellent variety in that attack. Add to that, they have a guy like Asalanka who can bowl a little bit, Hasaranga
DDS.
who's absolute class, Dhananjay De Silva who bowls off spin. Like bro, the bowling and the all rounder. Dashun Shanaka is one of the best T20
Yeah,
finishers
yeah,
in the world, right? With the bat. Someone nobody really talks about, but a very, very excellent T20 finisher. They've got a lot of class in this team. We just maybe people don't know their names as well. Um, it's probably just the batting, I think. I don't know if they have that like one reliable guy you can rely on day in, day out. But even then, Patum Nisanka, Samra Vikrama, Kushal
yeah,
Mendes is a fire rocket at the top when he gets going. Angelo Matthews, not in his peak anymore, but one of the best all rounders of his generation. They have
yeah,
pieces, bro.
definitely.
Like if they get on a run, they can be very dangerous in these conditions. Do I see it happening? I'm not quite sure, but I would not rule it out,
Yeah.
bro. Like I wouldn't sleep on Sri Lanka. You sleep on Sri Lanka,
That isn't.
they're
It's
gonna
an
beat
interesting
you.
group that as well, right? With South Africa, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Netherlands. Um, you could see like some upsets happening there. Like Netherlands again. I don't know if in these conditions they have what it takes, but they've shown us, in the ODI format and also in the last T20 World Cup that they have an upset in them, and they're playing South Africa again. So that group, if some
They're doing it
if
on
some
purpose,
if some
bro.
it's
They're
basically
putting them
like a
together
it's
on
basically a
purpose.
rivalry, a grudge match now. So let's see if they can turn them
Yeah.
over 3 for 3. They're going for the hat trick this time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Netherlands beat South Africa, and that group suddenly becomes thrown wide open, right? So yeah, maybe some hope for Bangladesh and Sri
Yeah.
Lanka there then. Um,
I'm looking at Sri Lanka though. Like they could make some
yeah,
noise. I
I
think.
agree.
I'd like to see
I
them
mean,
make
I'd
some
like to
noise
think
here.
so, but I don't know if they'll
Yeah.
be able to get quite there at the end.
But पेपर पे ब्रो तुम्हें नहीं लग रहा है like काफी
No, no,
dangerous team सिर्फ पेपर पे
they
की
do
अगर
for
बात करें.
sure. I'm not saying that they're not like players उनके पास हैं काफी. Like I said, right, they have the players with the ceiling to compete with some of the best, and they have good pieces around them. It's just gonna be like that consistency, and can they deliver in the big games? That they're gonna have to turn over someone like South Africa, maybe not in that initial group, but in the Super Eights, right? And that's where like I don't know if they'll
Yeah.
be able to quite do that. But with those conditions, with those spinners, who knows?